Joy can be just as devastating as horror. That's what nobody tells you. They warn you about the trauma of battle, the nightmares from the dead, but they don't tell you what it's like to watch pure human joy after years of suffering and realize you're too broken inside to feel it yourself. August 25th, 1944. The liberation of Paris. I was there, saw the whole thing. It should have been the happiest day of my career, should have been the story of a lifetime. Instead, it was the day I realized I'd left something essential behind somewhere between Normandy and the Seine, something I'd never get back. Name's Catherine Wells, war correspondent for the Chicago Tribune, 28 years old, one of maybe a dozen American women covering the European theater, had to fight like hell for the assignment. The editors didn't think a woman should be at the front, said it was too dangerous, too brutal, not appropriate. I wore them down eventually, convinced them I could handle it, that I'd seen enough in London during the Blitz to handle anything, that I could write the human angle other correspondents were missing, that readers wanted to know what the war looked like from the ground, not just from headquarters briefings. They finally agreed, sent me over in June 44, right after D-Day. I landed with a press contingent a week after the initial invasion. Normandy was still a meat grinder, bodies on the beaches, wounded streaming back through field hospitals, the smell of death everywhere. I wrote about it, sent dispatches back, described the courage of the soldiers, the determination of the Allies, the march toward victory. Good copy, inspirational, the kind of thing people needed to read while their sons and husbands were dying in France. But I left things out. Left out what it really looked like when artillery hit a position, left out what field surgeons did with the amputated limbs, left out the screaming, left out the way wounded men cried for their mothers, left out everything that would make it real, because if I made it real, nobody would be able to stand it, including me. I followed the advance, stayed with the 2nd Armored Division under General Leclerc, French division attached to Patton's Third Army. They were going to liberate Paris. Had to be them, de Gaulle insisted. The French would free their own capital. I was there for Saint-Lô, there for Argentan, there for the grinding push through Normandy hedgerows where every field was a killing ground. Saw boys from Iowa and Texas and Georgia die in ditches whose names I couldn't pronounce. Wrote about their bravery, their sacrifice, their nobility. Made them heroes on paper, made their deaths mean something. But at night, alone in whatever bombed-out building we were using as press quarters, I'd think about their faces, the surprise when they got hit, the confusion, the way they looked so young when they died, younger than they'd looked alive. By August, I was numb. That's the only word for it. Number. I'd seen too much. Written too many stories about courage and sacrifice, sent too many dispatches about the noble march toward victory. The words didn't mean anything anymore, just sounds I arranged in the right order to make readers feel good about the war. Then we started moving toward Paris. August 24th. The division was on the outskirts. We could see the Eiffel Tower in the distance, this iron tower rising above the city, still standing after 4 years of occupation. Still there, still Paris. The men were excited, even the American troops attached to the division, but especially the French, Leclerc's men. They were going home, going to free their city. Some of them had been fighting since 1940, 4 years of war, 4 years of exile, and now they were finally going back. I rode with a press convoy, 3 jeeps, half a dozen correspondents. We'd drawn straws for who got to cover the actual liberation. I won, or lost, depending on how you looked at it. We spent the night in a suburb, could hear gunfire from the city. The resistance had risen up, started fighting the Germans in the streets, barricades, ambushes, urban warfare. The Germans were still there, still fighting, but they were surrounded, cut off. It was only a matter of time. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. Kept thinking about Paris. I'd been there before the war, 1938, summer vacation, walked along the Seine, sat in cafes, ate bread and cheese and drank wine and watched the world go by. It had seemed eternal, like Paris would always be Paris, like nothing could change it. Then the war came. The Germans marched in. June 1940. No battle, no destruction, just surrendered. And Paris spent 4 years under occupation, 4 years of Nazi flags, 4 years of curfews and rations and fear, 4 years of people disappearing in the night, and now we were going to free it, give it back, make it Paris again. I should have been excited, should have felt something. This was history. This was the story I'd been chasing since D-Day, the liberation of Paris, the moment the war turned from grim necessity into something like hope. But I just felt tired and numb and empty. All I could think about was the boys I'd seen die in those hedgerows, all those bodies between Normandy and here, all those names I'd written in my dispatches, all those faces I couldn't forget. What did their deaths mean if Paris had always been here waiting? What did any of it mean? We entered the city on the 25th. Morning. Leclerc's division rolling in. American Shermans with French crews. Half-tracks. Trucks. Thousands of men, exhausted from fighting, rolling into the city they'd dreamed about for 4 years. And Paris went insane. I've never seen anything like it, never will again. The streets erupted. People poured out of buildings, thousands of them, tens of thousands, screaming, crying, waving flags, the tricolor everywhere, hidden for 4 years, suddenly flying from every window. They mobbed the tanks, climbed on them, covered them with flowers, kissed the soldiers, offered wine, bread, everything they had. Women threw flowers. Old men saluted. Children ran alongside the vehicles, laughing. Church bells rang all over the city, every church, ringing and ringing, the sound echoing off the buildings, announcing it to everyone. Paris is free. Paris is free. Paris is free. I stood in my Jeep with my notebook, trying to write, trying to capture it, but my hands were shaking. The noise was overwhelming. The emotion, the sheer explosive joy of an entire city that had been crushed for 4 years, suddenly able to breathe again. People were crying openly, unashamedly, crying and laughing at the same time, holding each other, strangers embracing, old enemies forgiven, everything forgotten except this moment, this impossible moment, liberation. A woman grabbed my hand. She was maybe 60, tears streaming down her face. She kissed both my cheeks and said something in French I didn't understand. Thank you, maybe, or we're free, or it's over. Something. Her joy was so pure it hurt to look at. I tried to smile, tried to match her emotion, but I couldn't feel it. I was watching it happen, but I wasn't part of it. Like I was behind glass, like I was already writing the dispatch in my head instead of living the moment. We moved deeper into the city, past the Arc de Triomphe, down the Champs-Élysées. The crowds got bigger, denser, more frantic, people everywhere, the noise deafening, the joy suffocating. I saw a French soldier, young guy, couldn't have been more than 20. He was just standing on his tank crying, not trying to hide it, not ashamed, just crying with this look of disbelief on his face, like he couldn't believe it was real, like he'd given up hoping and now hope had ambushed him. An old man approached him, handed him a bottle of wine. The soldier took it, drank, offered it back. The old man refused, saluted instead, this formal, perfect salute. The soldier returned it, both of them crying. I wrote it down. Perfect human interest angle, the kind of detail that would make readers tear up back home, the kind of story that made the war mean something. But watching it, all I could think about was a kid from Georgia I'd seen die near St. Lo, took shrapnel in the throat, bled out in 30 seconds. He was 22. He'd never see this, never see Paris freed, never see any of it pay off. The celebration went on for days, literally days. Paris just exploded with joy. Every hour, every street, people dancing, singing, drinking, making love in doorways, making up for 4 years of fear in one continuous burst of ecstatic release. I filed my stories, described the liberation, the crowds, the tears, the kisses, the flowers, the bells, made it beautiful, made it meaningful, made it the story everyone needed it to be. The Tribune loved it, sent cables, wanted more human interest, more emotion, more inspiration, more proof that we were winning, that the sacrifice was worth it, that all those dead boys had died for something. So I gave them what they wanted, wrote about the French resistance fighters emerging from hiding, about the collaborators being paraded through the streets, heads shaved, humiliated, about de Gaulle marching down the Champs-Élysées while snipers still fired from rooftops, about the rebirth of a city, the resurrection of hope, all of it true, all of it real, all of it utterly disconnected from what I actually felt, which was nothing. I attended a celebration at a cafe near Notre Dame. Place was packed, everyone drinking, toasting, singing La Marseillaise over and over, American soldiers, French civilians, resistance fighters, all together, all celebrating. A French officer tried to dance with me, nice guy, good looking, wanted to celebrate, wanted to share the joy. I danced with him, smiled, laughed when I was supposed to, but I felt like a fraud, like I was acting in a play, like I was watching myself from outside my body. C'est magnifique, non? He said. It's magnificent, no? Oui, I said. Magnifique. But it wasn't, not for me. For me it was just noise, just people, just another thing to write about and file and move on from. I left the cafe early, walked back to the hotel where press corps was staying. The streets were still full of celebration, people everywhere, joy everywhere, hope everywhere. I felt more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. I stayed in Paris for 2 weeks, covered the aftermath, the French consolidation, the celebration settling into something more sustainable, life beginning to return to normal. I wrote good stories, great stories even. The editors were thrilled. I'd captured something essential about the liberation, about what it meant, about hope and freedom and the human spirit triumphant. But I was falling apart, slowly, quietly, in ways nobody could see. I'd wake up at night in the hotel and I'd hear the church bells, still ringing in my head. And instead of joy, I'd feel this crushing weight, this sense of wrongness, like I was betraying something, like I'd lost something I couldn't name. I started drinking, not much, just enough to sleep, just enough to quiet the thoughts, just enough to stop seeing the faces, the dead boys from Normandy, the wounded from St. Lo, all the ones who didn't make it to Paris. One night I ran into Ernest Hemingway. He was in Paris too, covering the liberation for Collier's. We'd met a few times during the campaign. He was already famous, already a legend. I was just another correspondent trying to make a name. We had drinks at the Ritz. Place was full of correspondents and officers and French dignitaries. Everyone celebrating, everyone riding the high of liberation. Hell of a story, Hemingway said. Paris freed, the city of light, good guys win, perfect ending. Perfect, I agreed. He looked at me, really looked, like he could see through the professional facade, through the words I'd been writing, through to whatever was actually happening inside. You okay, Will? Fine. Why? Because you look like someone died. Lots of people died. I mean you, he said. You look like you died. I didn't answer, couldn't, because he was right. Something had died. Somewhere between Normandy and Paris, some part of me that could feel things had stopped working, had worn out, had given up. It's the joy, he said quietly. It's harder to take than the horror. The horror makes sense. He gestured at the celebrating crowd. This breaks something because you can't feel it anymore, and you know you should. I started crying right there in the Ritz bar. Just started crying and couldn't stop. Hemingway didn't say anything, just sat there, let me cry, ordered another drink. I can't feel anything, I said finally. I'm watching the greatest moment of the war, and I can't feel anything. You feel too much, he said. That's the problem. You've been feeling everything for everyone for months. Now you're empty, nothing left. What do? You keep going. You write the stories. You do the job. And maybe someday you figure out how to feel again, or maybe you don't, but you keep going anyway. It's November now, 1945. The war in Europe ended in May. I covered VE Day, covered the aftermath, covered the liberation of more cities, more celebrations, more joy I couldn't feel. The Tribune wanted me to stay, cover the occupation, cover the rebuilding, but I came home, told them I needed a break, told them I was exhausted, didn't tell them I was broken. I'm back in Chicago now, living in a small apartment, trying to figure out what comes next, trying to figure out how to be a person again instead of just an observer writing dispatches. People want to hear about Paris, about the liberation, about that glorious moment when freedom returned. They want the stories I wrote, the beautiful triumphant stories about joy and hope and the human spirit. I tell them what they want to hear. Tell them about the flowers and the tears and the bells. Tell them it was magnificent. Tell them it was the greatest moment of the war. I don't tell them the truth, that I watched it happen and felt nothing, that I stood in the middle of the greatest celebration in history and was completely empty inside. That joy can traumatize you just as surely as horror. I don't tell them about the boys who died in the hedgerows, about how their faces haunt me more than the celebration heals me, about how every image of joy is paired with an image of death in my mind. The old man saluting the crying soldier, the kid from Georgia bleeding out in a ditch. I don't tell them that liberation feels like a lie when you've seen what it costs, that freedom feels hollow when you've watched too many people die for it, that victory tastes like ash when you're too numb to celebrate it. I tried to write about it, about the real experience, about what it's actually like to cover a war, about how it changes you in ways you can't explain, about how you can watch the most joyful moment in modern history and feel nothing but grief for all the people who didn't live to see it. But I couldn't finish it, couldn't find the words, or maybe couldn't face what the words revealed about what I'd become. My editor called last week, wants me to write a book about covering the war, about the liberation of Paris, about my experiences as a woman correspondent, says it would sell, says people want to hear the story. I told him maybe, told him I'd think about it, but I know I won't because I can't write that book honestly, and I can't write it dishonestly anymore. The stories I filed from Paris were lies, beautiful lies, necessary lies, but lies. I described joy I didn't feel, hope I couldn't access, triumph I couldn't believe in. I wrote what readers needed, what the moment required, what history demanded. But the truth is, I stood in liberated Paris and thought about death, stood among thousands of people celebrating life and felt dead inside, watched the greatest expression of human joy I'll ever witness and couldn't feel any of it. That's what war does, not just to soldiers, to everyone who gets close enough to really see it. It takes something from you, some capacity for feeling, some ability to experience joy without grief shadowing it, some essential human thing that lets you celebrate victory without counting the cost. I gave that thing away somewhere in France, left it in a hedgerow near St. Lo, or in a field hospital in Normandy, or in the faces of all those boys who died before Paris was freed, and I'll never get it back. People call me brave, call me a trailblazer, one of the first women to cover combat, one of the witnesses to history, someone who saw the great moments and recorded them for posterity. They're not wrong. I did all those things, saw all those moments, wrote all those words, but I lost myself doing it, lost the person I was before Normandy, lost the ability to feel what normal people feel, lost the capacity for pure joy. Paris was liberated on August 25th, 1944. The bells rang. The people danced. The city came back to life. It was glorious. It was magnificent. It was everything the war was supposed to be about: freedom, hope, victory, life defeating death. And I watched it happen from behind a wall of glass I couldn't break through, watched history unfold and couldn't feel it, watched joy explode and couldn't share it, watched liberation and felt only the weight of all the people who'd been liberated from life itself to make it possible. That's my story of the liberation of Paris, not the one I wrote for the Tribune, not the one readers wanted, not the one history remembers, but the truth. I went to Paris to witness joy. Instead, I discovered that joy, after enough horror, becomes just another thing you observe and record and file away. Another story, another moment, another dispatch from a war that never really ends, even when the fighting stops. Some people came home from the war missing limbs. Some came home shell-shocked. I came home missing the ability to feel, missing some essential humanity that let me connect to the best moments the same way I'd connected to the worst. The worst marked me, changed me, made me hard, made me numb, made me a better correspondent, but a worse human. And when the best moment came, when Paris exploded with pure joy, when history gave us a perfect triumphant story to believe in, I couldn't feel it, could only stand there taking notes, recording it for others, translating it into words people could understand, but never feeling it myself. That's what I brought home from Paris. Not joy, not hope, not triumph, just the knowledge that I'd lost something essential, something that let other people celebrate while I just watched and wrote and remained forever outside the moment, forever documenting, forever distant, forever unable to cross from observer to participant. They liberated Paris in August 1944. But they didn't liberate me. I'm still there, standing in the crowd, surrounded by joy I can't access, watching history happen, taking notes, writing the beautiful lie, still alone, still empty, still trapped behind glass that makes me a good correspondent and a broken human being, still writing about triumph while feeling only loss, still describing joy while drowning in its absence, still, after everything, unable to celebrate the victory I helped document, unable to feel the hope I helped create, unable to be anything except the witness, the recorder, the translator of other people's emotions into words that readers believe, but I can't feel. That's the cost of covering war. That's the price of bearing witness. That's what I paid to write those beautiful stories about the liberation of Paris. Everything. I paid everything. And in return, I got nothing but words on paper and an emptiness that will never fill.